Hey there, friends. Welcome to the Being Brown and Bold podcast. I am your host, Jess Thomas. We are so glad that you're joining us for all of our amazing conversations about stepping out of our comfort zone, being bold, and taking chances. Today, I am chatting with Jessny Joseph. You might know her from Instagram as a digital content creator for her bodybuilding, and most recently, diving into her Malayali heritage. What you may not know about is her bicultural background, her science degree, and her current career as a coder. She has had quite the journey growing up in Las Vegas and settling in now in Texas. And I'm so excited to speak with her today. Jessny, it is so great to have you here on the podcast.
Hi, Jess. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here today.
I just when I found you, I just felt this connection with you. And it could be because my name before I got married was Jessy Joseph, and you're Jessny Joseph, and we both are curly hair girls. So I think this is going to be fun.
I
So,
know we have so many similarities.
right? So to get started, a lot of our guests I start with, tell me about your name, how to pronounce it, how you got it, what it means.
Yeah, so my name's Jessny, and a lot of people have trouble pronouncing it. Like when they see it, they don't know how to read it. So I always say, just say Jessny, like your knee, I just point. But yeah,
Yep.
my dad made it up. He wanted a name that was like kind of close to Jesus, or at least spelled similarly. So that's how he came up with it.
I don't know if I told you this, but what's funny is when I was born, my parents named me Jesse, Mary, Joseph. So you have the whole nativity in my name. And I don't even know if they planned that on purpose because my grandmother's names were Mary, both of them. And so, or Mariama, so Mary in English. So yeah, I love that both of us have this, our parents wanting to be biblical in our names. So that's super fun. So yes, tell us about yourself. What does it mean to be you?
What it means to be me is to be completely unapologetic, just pursuing your dreams wholeheartedly, not being afraid of what people think of you.
And I do think a lot of people feel hesitant about that. So I love how you even said unapologetically, because you just put yourself out there, which feels scary a little bit. But I think that's how you really connect with people, right?
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about your cultural heritage and how it has informed your work and your life?
Yeah, so I'm half Colombian, half Indian. My dad is from Kerala and my mom's from Bogota, Colombia. And I feel like they both have very different perspectives in terms of what my career should look like and what I should pursue. So my dad would always be like, you have to be a doctor, lawyer, or engineer. Like those are the three options that I had to choose from, but mainly doctor. Like he was like, you're gonna be a doctor. And mom was like, just pursue your dreams, do whatever you want, like follow your heart. So I always had those two perspectives in my mind, like which one should I do? Like, do I follow this path? Do I follow the other? And I feel like I kind of pursued both. Like I started off by getting my biochemistry degree and I was gonna go on to go to med school, and then I was like, wait, I don't know if this is actually my passion. So I'm gonna take a step back and I'm gonna actually pursue what I've always wanted to do. So I feel like I kind of listened to both pieces of advice.
And I do feel like there's different stages and phases of life where you're pursuing different things and you don't have to be in one, but because you decided this, you have to do this the rest of your life. I feel like, no, that's completely untrue. And as I watch you and what you're choosing, I feel like that's the path you are choosing of having a good balance of what you're gifted in, talented, and experiences. So you are following your heart, but you also are using your gifts and your interests.
Yeah.
I know nothing about Colombian culture. So all I know is Colombia is in South America, and I believe they speak Spanish. As a person that knows nothing, what are some typical traits or characteristics of Colombian culture?
I feel like Colombian culture is very like free spirited, have a good time, enjoy your time with your family, party, like live in the moment, you know? I feel like family is very important, friends are very important, like just having a good time, I would say is Colombian culture.
And tell me about Colombian food, because I also don't know anything about Colombian food. What's a typical weekday meal and what's like a typical party festival type of meal?
Okay, so like I believe the national dish is sudado, which is like chicken and potato. It's like almost like a stew, chicken, potato, carrots. It's like it's so different from Kerala food because Colombian food is not spicy at all. Like, and it's only like a few ingredients where like I feel like Indian food is like you have to use like 20 or 30 spices, you know, there's a lot that goes into it. So I feel like, yeah, the national dish is sudado. It's so, so good. And typically you eat it with like a bowl of rice, and then sometimes it's like a slice of avocado and some plátanos or like fried plantains. And then for like a holiday, like let's say it's like New Year's or Christmas, typically we'll make tamales. They're different from Mexican tamales. They're like they're like way bigger and like use different meats and stuff like that. Or another thing is called arepas, which is like this it's like corn meal and you put cheese in it and it's so good. So yeah, those are some of the popular dishes.
That sounds amazing. Like now I'm gonna have to, after this, go Google a bunch of like Colombian recipes because that sounds delicious. So when you were tiny in your house with your parents, did you eat more Colombian food or did you eat more Indian food? Because both your parents cook?
Yeah, so my dad's a chef, that's what he does, and he would always like I remember when I was like a kid, he would always make chapati and I would always say I want to join. So I remember we would like roll the balls and like flatten it out with the little roller and stuff. So I loved helping him out with that. And I remember he would always make like shrimp and like I don't know, just a bunch of different foods. But my mom also loves to cook, especially my grandma. When I was young, I would always help my grandma cook. Like anytime there was a big event, like I'd go help her. So that's how I learned a lot of the recipes. And yeah. Oh,
So
and I would
what,
say I grew up eating more Colombian food just because I was raised by my Colombian side. But whenever I'd go visit my dad, he obviously he would cook a bunch of food. Like I would be like, I'm kind of hungry, and I would just want like a little bit, and he would give me like four different plates and like, here, eat it all. And I'm like, no, I'm not eating all of this, you know?
that's a total Indian thing of like, eat, eat, eat. And it's like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I'm gonna explode. So now, do you like your food spicy or not spicy?
So like I thought I ate kind of spicy, but every time I eat with my family, like my Indian family, they're like, this is not spicy at all. Like you don't handle any spice. You need to eat more spice. And I'm like, no, I don't think my gut can handle it. Like I just
Ah,
can't do it. So I eat like medium spice level, I feel.
got it, got it. I would say I am more a medium girl, but I remember when I was little, my parents would cook Kerala food. It was way hotter, but now that they're older, they can't handle spice. Like they literally went to Kerala and told like the people in the kitchen, wherever they went, restaurants, home, like put zero put zero malagapodi in there, put zero kandari in there. Like we want no peppers in there at all. I was like, wow, times have truly changed because it was not like that before. Well, cool. Okay, so when you were little, what did you imagine your life would be like as an adult?
When I was little, I thought I would be married by 23. I thought I'd like be a doctor right now, or like I always said I'd be like a doctor or scientist. I guess I kind of became a scientist with my biochemistry degree. But like, yeah, I thought everything would be so different. Like I'd have like a cute little family and my dogs and everything. And I feel like life did not turn out that way. And honestly, I'm okay with that.
And I think that's like normal that when we're little, we're like, this is what life is going to be like. And I don't know anybody that that's what their life actually became. because good things happen, bad things happen, different, or like you just figure out who you are as a person, and that's going to change depending on your experiences. So let's focus on the career part. When it came to your career, did you have any difficulties in choosing a specific vocational path?
Yeah, I had a lot of difficulties with that because I feel like I have a lot of interests and they're all completely unrelated. And I think my biggest issue was just choosing one, like just narrowing down and just going with it and like running with it, you know? Because I find myself always like tapping into different things. Like I'll like get a random interest and I'm like, okay, I need to dive deep into that. And it's just like, okay, Jessny, just pick a path and go. So yeah, I feel like that was hard. And like also just having the conflicting advice from like my two different sides of family, I'm like, what do I choose? What is right? Like, you know, I think I struggled a lot with like being a perfectionist, wanting to like get it right the first time and going with it. And when sometimes you just have to make the decision and figure it out later.
Yeah, and I mean, you are still young. I'm much older than you. I would also say it's okay to like have all different kinds of dreams and interests and be good at all different things. But today, like you're going in this path, and that might change. And like for me, I was always in Christian ministry. Then I was a homeschool mom. And so I was teaching my kids. And then when I was 40, I started going in the culinary world and I became a personal chef. And now that I'm in my 50s, now I am doing this podcast. Like I have so many different interests. And what's cool is at this stage, I've done so many of them and it's been great. And so for you, if you truly like one day, you're like, maybe I do want to be a doctor, you totally could. I mean, you got a full scholarship to college as a biochemistry major, right? Like you have the ability. It's more of, is that what I want to do now? But yes, you can. And it's not this concept, especially for women, it's like, oh, you can do it all. I'm not saying you can do it all, but I think you can do lots of different things, but in different seasons. And I don't think people realize that's okay. You can do different things at different times. You don't have to do everything today.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So this minute, I mean, why you're really popular on Instagram is a lot about your fitness. So tell us more about your fitness journey and how that's helped you holistically.
Yeah, so it started off when I was actually in high school. I was pretty sick. Like I was having a lot of digestive issues. I couldn't hold food down. I was like passing out. Like I was having a lot of like health problems and I went to a lot of different doctors and everyone was like, "You're fine. It's all in your head. Like nothing's wrong with you." And I'm like, "No, like I'm actually really sick." So I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna like do an experiment on myself. I'm gonna like alter my diet and see if that helps. And if it doesn't help, then I don't lose anything." So like I for a year and a half, I went gluten-free vegan and I was very strict with my diet. Like it was only whole foods. Like I wouldn't it was gluten-free vegan whole foods only. And through that, I healed my sickness and I started to feel better. And I was like, okay, like I just fell in love with nutrition as a whole. And I was like also really interested in fitness. And when I got to college, it was my freshman year of college, I started bodybuilding and I was like so nervous going in. I remember going in and like it's just a bunch of dudes and I'm like this one like short 5'1" girl, like, okay, like let me grab my dumbbells, my little 10-pound dumbbells, and like it's just so funny like being in there. Cause like you learn a lot, especially as a beginner. You like, I remember I would go and I'd watch YouTube videos at the time, there was only, like, YouTube, so I'd watch that, I'd memorize the workout, and I'd go in and I'd do the workout, and, like, I feel like at the time, like, because when you show up the first day, you're not gonna see any results, but, like, over time, like, months, year it's like, "Whoa," like, a year ago, I look completely different, you know? And, like, I just absolutely fell in love with bodybuilding, and that's how I just kept going with it, and when I moved to Houston, I started working out at Alphaland, and, like, there, it's just pure bodybuilders, like, everyone in there is fit, everyone looks good, and I feel like just being in that environment, putting myself in that environment, like made me better as a person. And yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah, I think um, having that motivation and focus and discipline seemed like it really helped you, not just physically, but like emotionally too.
Yeah, I feel like I struggled a lot in college, especially mentally, and I felt like fitness was the one thing that I could fall back on. It was the thing that kind of kept me going, and to this day, it still keeps me going. And also, it just taught me like the importance of having a routine, the importance of being disciplined, and yeah, I recommend it to everyone.
Yeah, you're inspiring me because I'm the one with those 10-pound dumbbells that are like, okay, I just keep doing repetitions, like you'll get there. Although I went crazy, I actually bought 12-pound dumbbells. So I'm
There
getting
you go.
wild. You had said that you had like so many different interests, like as you were growing up, and I don't know, if there were other factors of being bicultural. Did you feel as you were growing up you didn't really fit in just because of who you were, or even because your dreams were different from your classmates or your family?
Yeah, I always felt like I didn't fit in because, like, number one, being mixed, like, on my Colombian side, I don't look like anyone, like, in my family, like, especially growing up. I feel like now I look a lot like my mom, but when I was young, I didn't look like anyone, so I was always, like, the odd one out, and, like, also in terms of my dreams, I felt like because everyone there's, like, the pre-meds, there's the ones that wanna be engineers, there's the athletes, and I was like, "Wait, I kinda like all these groups, like, I like all these different spaces," so I would hang out with everyone, and it was hard for me to just find one specific place where I felt like, "Okay, this is my group, this is where I belong," so I kinda just started to I felt like I don't need to fit into one group. I'm okay with just pursuing all my interests and, you know, going after my goals like that.
Yeah, no, that's good. And as you were growing up, did you have any struggles with honoring your parents versus driving towards your dreams?
Yeah, I remember especially when I was young, like, my whole thing was I wanted to make my dad proud. I wanted to, like, go to med school. I wanted to make that dream happen for him, and that's kind of why when I was, like, picking my degree, I was like, "Okay, biochemistry is, like, one of the best degrees to go to med school." It's like, it's just a great degree for that. And so I didn't think about it. I was like, "I don't know anything about this. I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna go be a doctor, and that's what it's gonna be." And I kind of convinced myself that it was my dream. Like, at the time, I was very convincing, and I'd be like, "Yeah, like, I'm gonna go be an oncologist. Like, this is what I wanna do." But, like, deep down, I knew that it wasn't, and I believe it was my sophomore year of college, I was like, "Yeah, I'm not going to med school. Like, this is not like, it's not sustainable because I can't keep convincing myself that this is actually what I wanna do." And I remember, like, telling my dad the news, and I was just like I felt so bad, but I knew that I had to pick myself for once, and ever since that day, I've decided, like, I'm just pursuing my dreams, I'm going after what I want, and I feel like I'll make him proud in the process because at the end of the day, like, he just wants what's best for me. I don't think it was so much like, oh, like, having the title of being a doctor. I think he just wanted me to have a stable job, something that I would have no headaches because he himself is a business owner and, like, that is, like, my passion, and he's like, "No, like, there's so many headaches, you never know if, like, the income's gonna be stable," and he didn't want me to go through what he went through. So, looking back on that and reflecting on that, I'm like, yeah, he it wasn't so much the title, he just wants me to not go through the hardships he went through.
And I think that's like a total immigrant culture thing of like they came to this country to make sure we had better lives. And part of that is financial stability. But what I hear, I work a lot with pre-health students, and a lot of them want to go into some sort of medical career. Yes, there's financial stability, but a lot of it is I want to help people. And
Yeah.
because you may not know all the paths of ways of helping people, people just kind of assume doctors like the best way to do it when there's so many different ways. And that's what I love about you and your bodybuilding, because what I hear from you is I want to help people be as fit as possible, to take whatever they have and make it the best they can. It's not everybody has to look a certain way or be a certain weight or anything like that. And so I feel like that is what you're doing. You are helping people.
Yeah, exactly.
So your dad cooks Indian food, right? That's his restaurant.
Yeah, yeah.
And has a business. So have you ever wanted to do like anything in the restaurant business?
I remember when I was like younger, like when I was in high school, I'd be like, okay, like I'm probably gonna take over my dad's business when I'm older and I'm gonna like help him out there. And he was like, no, you are not stepping foot in here. You're gonna go be a doctor and that's that. So like there was a point where I was like, I want to do this, but he was like, no, no, no. So yeah, but just in general, like I do love cooking. I love baking, especially I would always like when I was, like, living in Vegas, I'd make all these random desserts all the time, and, like, my mom loved it because, it's like every week there was, like, a new different dessert for her to try. But now I live alone, so it's like, okay, and I'm, like, trying to be fit, so I'm like, "Okay, I can't be making desserts all the time." But I do love cooking.
Yeah, baking was always my thing. When I first started out cooking, I did baking, and then I morphed into like cooking. But yeah, there's something about baking where you're doing the work, but then when you put in the oven, you can just like kind of relax and
Yeah.
enjoy the wafting of the yummy smells coming from the oven.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. Um, so as growing up brown for me, and a lot of people that I've talked to, a central focus of being brown and culturally is marriage. And I know, like, for a lot of me and my friends, when our families came to America, they told us growing up, hey, you are not allowed to date. You have to finish your education, you have to get a job, and then maybe you can think about marriage. And dating is when you're married, you can go on dates. And so it was a very narrow view. And I don't know if it's based on what they saw in American culture and maybe they were scared of American culture or what they knew growing up. Does any of that echo with your story and the way that you were taught growing up?
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, my dad would always be like, "You can't even look at a guy until after you're graduated from med school." He's like, "Don't even think about it." And it's funny because now he's like, "Okay, where's your husband at? Like, why are
Yep.
you not married?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? You told me I couldn't couldn't even look at a guy."
Yeah.
And like, but then on the other hand, my mom and like my Colombian side, they're always like they've always been open to dating and they're like, "Where's your boyfriend at? Like, hurry up and get married. Like, don't worry about like graduating from med school to get married." Like, they're just more open to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it was always interesting just hearing the two sides of things and like the two different advice. I'm like, which one's right? Which one do I choose? So, but I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of pressure surrounding that, especially like because you know, my dad especially, he's like, "I want you to have 10 kids." And like
10 kids. How many siblings
yeah.
did he have?
I think he had like 2, but I
Why
don't know,
10
he just
then?
wants me to
That's
have a
crazy.
big I don't know. I'm like, "Who's gonna raise 10 kids? I'm not doing it." So,
He's
I
also
don't know.
never
I
birthed a
wanted to
human. If he gave birth to a human, I'm sure he would not want to birth 10.
I know, he's not even thinking about that, like, that's gonna be a lot of pain. So, I think I want, like, 3 or 4. I feel like that's good.
Yeah. Okay, but now this minute you are single. So how do you react when people ask you about you being single or when you're getting married or even you have a lot of followers on Instagram with lots of comments, like have you gotten any proposals on Instagram to get married?
I have definitely gotten marriage proposals. I get a lot of DMs, like, they're like, "I'm in love with you, will you marry me?" And I mean, I don't really have a reaction. I feel like I I know when the time is right, I will meet the right person and I will have my soulmate. I am the biggest hopeless romantic, like, I just wanna find the love of my life, and I'm not gonna settle until I find that person. So, I'm not really worried about it, I think, I wanna be patient, I don't wanna rush it, I'd rather be happy in a relationship and be with them till death than, like, end up getting with someone, rushing it, and then getting in a divorce, like, that's the one thing that I wanna prevent from happening. So, yeah.
I know a lot of people do, when they're dating and they plan to get married, they spend so much time focusing on the wedding date and getting prepared, a year in advance with like all the details. But I know very few people who spend equal amounts of time preparing for marriage, like how to be the best
Yeah.
husband, wife you could possibly be, how to learn how to be compatible financially, conflict management and resolution, and working on those things. So, my advice always is work on being the best spouse you can be, because if you can do that and you're realistic that marriage is hard work and it takes two to make it work, then it's going to definitely improve the quality of your marriage, the length of your marriage. So whenever that happens, when you meet the person that you want to marry, that's what I would say is like work on all those things, because that's what's going to make your marriage. Because marriage is hard, just like everything in life is hard, and there's always roller coasters. So if you work on those things, when you get into like the scary parts of the roller coaster, you're still hanging on. Because if it's a good roller coaster, you're not going to fly off, and the car's not going to fly off. So you will still have the dips and turns, but you're like holding on to each other. That's my romantic advice.
I think that's really good advice, and I think it's so true because I feel like a lot of people just jump into relationships not really thinking like, "Am I actually compatible with this person? Like, am I just like blinded by love, or are we actually gonna work out?" Because there's a lot of red flags that says that we're not gonna work out, you know? So I think that's why I'm so picky. I'm like, if I see something that I know we're not ever gonna be compatible with I'm not gonna go and date them for a while and like ignore all the red flags, you know?
Right.
I don't know.
I was talking to a
Same with, like,
friend.
having children.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
definitely.
yeah?
I have a friend who she actually also is a powerlifter, bodybuilder, now that I think of it, but she was talking about all these people like that are a gym. And at the time she was single, and she's like, you know what? Everybody's hot. Like, that's not a qualification for me to date somebody,
Yeah.
because everybody's hot. There's so many hot people. So if you're like, oh, that they need to be hot, like everybody is. Like, there's so many other qualities that are much more important than hotness. And I was like, you're right. There's very many beautiful people. And yeah, so I think that's good advice to like be wise in how you are putting yourself out there and how you are receiving. Like, I affirm you in not responding to any of these online proposals on your Instagram DMs.
I know.
So as you have encountered different cultures, both like living in Nevada, living in Texas, your Colombian background, your Malayali background, you've seen faith expressed differently. So has faith or any belief system informed the way that you see life?
Yeah, I feel like it definitely has. I feel like before I put God at the forefront of my life, I was always really anxious. I was always really worried. Like, if I was having, like, a job interview or just anything, I was always worried about the outcome, and I feel like now I'm a little bit more just, like, relaxed in terms of things because I know God is leading the path for me. He's, like, guiding me where I need to go, and I know that I don't really have to worry about anything because it's all gonna play out in the end, like, everything's gonna work out in the end, and there's nothing to worry about, so I think having that mentality makes me feel more at ease to make certain decisions where before I would be like, I don't know if I should do this. I don't know if it's gonna work out. Like, it would take me forever to make a decision where now it's just like, okay, just do it, you know?
No, I totally agree. I feel for me, in my faith, I feel more confident and secure because I know I'm not God and I know I'm not in charge. And then it's kind of like this relief of like, oh, well, if I'm not in charge, then I'm good. Like I can like relinquish control, which it took me a while to get there because when I was younger, I was definitely like control freak of like, I need to be in control of everything. And then I realized I'm just stressing myself out because if I'm in control, you can't control everything, right? There are things that are beyond your control. So to allow God to take that and me not taking it has been a huge relief for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think ju even just, like, mentally, like, when I sit down and pray and I'm just like, "God, like, take this from me, like, take my worries away from me," and then you just feel, like, this overwhelming, like, amount of peace because you know, like, God is sitting there right next to you, and He's taking care of you, like, "Don't worry, girl, like, you're fine," you know? And
That's awesome.
he knows what is best for you, so it's like there's nothing to worry about in terms of anything, and I think also just having like, I think it's important, at least for me, to have religion to fall back on because it helps me know what's right and wrong. I feel like there's so much different advice from, like, growing up in Vegas, obviously, and, like, even from social media and everything, there's so much, like, conflicting advice, and sometimes you don't know what to choose, but, like, I can always just, like, rely on the Bible. I can always just find so much wisdom in there, and, like, that has been how I am able to go through life.
That's great. Yeah. Same. Same. Okay, let's go back to culture. What is something that is stereotypical, both of your Malayali culture and your Colombian culture, that it may be a stereotype, but it's actually true?
Yeah, on my mother's side, like, it's definitely true, especially, like, having a mother dad, like, he's strict, like, you cannot be out late, you know, you can't date before your career set, and, like, also education is extremely important, like, all the time, it was just like, you know, be number 1, be at the top of your class, you know, like, work hard, you know, and that is so true. Like, but it's so funny because, like, I would say my Colombian side's, like, opposite from that, and then in terms of, like, stereotypical Colombian stuff, uh, definitely we drink, so much coffee, like, it's a huge cup of coffee in the morning, and then anytime you go to someone's house, it's always like, "Oh, like, do you want tinto?" Like, that's, like, a word for coffee, and it's always, like, a big cup of coffee with, like, a little pastry, and I think that's why I drink so much coffee now. And also, like, we love to party and have a good time, it's all about just, like, living life to the fullest, and that's so true.
And I feel like, you come from these two technically different backgrounds, but what you just said is very similar for both because Indians like to have a good time and party and everything's revolved around food. And it feels like Colombian culture is like that. And in Kerala specifically, even though we have chaya and other parts of India, they call it chai, um, really coffee is what's originally more popular in Kerala. And so many families grow coffee beans in their backyard in Kerala and roast their own coffee. And so, like, even my family, my dad brought back like coffee beans from his sister's house, I think, that was like fresh roasted there. So I think that's fascinating. And then, yeah, how can you have coffee without a snack or chai time without a snack? So I feel like if people understand that, they actually do understand both cultures um, pretty well. And it sounds like you're pretty balanced in the way you handle both cultures in your life.
Yeah, I think it's, like, there are a lot of similarities, especially because in my dad's house at 4 p.m., there's gonna be chaya being made, and there's gonna be like some sort of either like I don't know, he always has like these cake rusks to eat with the coffee. I mean with the chaya or some sort of little pastry. So there are a lot of similarities. I think it's really funny.
One thing I didn't ask you about or talk about is, diving into Malayali culture. So I saw that you had said this, but I didn't believe you on your Instagram when I first found you, that you know how to read and write Malayalam, but you don't know how to speak it. I'm like, oh, she's just joking, but it's true, right?
Yeah, I'm not joking. Like it's so cute because it was my number one goal when I moved to Houston, like to learn Malayalam. I'm like, I'm gonna learn it no matter what. And so my dad was like, all right, I'm gonna set you up with this teacher that lives in Kottayam. You're gonna do Zoom classes. And like with our classes, how we started was okay, you're in preschool, you're gonna start learning the alphabet, you're gonna learn how to read and write it. And then from there, we're gonna start practicing like getting better vocabulary and working on speaking it. So that's how I started learning, and I can fully read and write it, but I just need to practice more. Because I remember when I was actually in grade school, I had so many flashcards. I had to learn words just by like running through them and like going to a dictionary and all of that. And I feel like I need to do the exact same thing with Malayalam so that I can get really like fluent in it and like practice speaking it. But like reading it is I feel like it's not that hard. It was hard at first. I'm like, what are these letters? Like, what do they mean? Like, it's so different from English because Spanish is like almost the same alphabet. There's only like two letters that are different or one letter. But like Malayalam was like, whoa, like this is completely different. But it took a couple, like I think it was like 2 or 3 months. Then I started to learn how to read it, and now my biggest struggle is speaking.
Yeah. And that's why I was shocked because I remember, so my parents came from Kerala to America, and all my friends, same thing. And none of us learned how to read and write it. We didn't try, we didn't really want to. But, and my parents did not even speak to me in Malayalam growing up because they wanted me to be perfect in English. But every single one of my friends, including my husband's family, the parents spoke to them in Malayalam, so they were listening to it all the time. So they either learned how to understand it listening to it, or they listened and spoke it at home, so they understood and they spoke it. And I can understand a little bit of it, but I can barely speak it. Like I can't think of the vocabulary words. So that's why it wasn't that I thought you were like joking or lying. It's more like, oh, that's funny because who does that? I'm like, oh, you actually do that. So I'm like super impressed that you can read and write Malayalam. Um, but I feel like pronouncing a lot of the words, I think it's difficult. One of my North Indian friends said that when she hears Malayalam, it sounds like somebody talking underwater, the way that the words come out. And I was like, oh, maybe that's, and so, yeah, so do not feel bad. I think it's hard to pronounce. Are you thinking about underwater? You think about
Yeah,
Nemo
because
speaking Malayalam?
I think that was so funny because on a video on my Instagram is like of me and Alan, my friend Alan, like we film videos together in the gym speaking Malayalam, and like one of like the top like comments is like, why did you say Malayalam like you were underwater? And I remember when I read that comment, I was like dying because I'm like,
I didn't
he
even
did
know
sound a
that.
little
That's so
underwater,
funny.
but I didn't know it was like a thing where like because she said everyone sounds like they're underwater, so I thought that was so funny because
That is
I don't
funny.
think so though.
I don't, maybe because there's a lot of, I don't know, like softer sounds. I don't know, but yeah, I'm really proud of you for pursuing it. Tell me some of your favorite influencer teachers that teach or speak Malayalam. Maybe we'll like link those
Def
here.
Yeah, definitely Ellie Kruti, like love her, learn a lot. Mr. Christopher and Inverted Coconut, I think that definitely they put such good content, and like especially like Inverted Coconut, like the way she pronounces words is so accurate. I'm like, how did you get the accent so good? Like I struggle so hard like pronouncing words, and she just does it like she is from Kerala, you know?
Well, you
So
know her
yeah, I
story,
recommend
right?
all of them. No, I don't know her story.
Oh, it is because she's from Kerala. I think,
Oh,
I don't know if she was born there, but she lived there until she was like 7 or 8. And
oh,
in no English, I think. It was just pure, I mean, her parents were from America, but she lived in Kerala. And so that's how she learned Malayalam with an authentic accent, because that's literally where she learned it from.
that makes a lot of sense. Okay, I
Yeah,
didn't know that. Because I'm like,
yeah,
whoa, like how does she pronouncing so well?
yeah. That is why. And so when I learned it, I'm like, oh, that totally makes sense, because friends and family that I know that came to America when they were 7, if they kept up their Malayalam, sounds like they're from Kerala and not like me,
Yeah.
like Enda Vishesham. So yeah, Sugamano.
Uh, they always make fun of me for how I say everything. It's because on my last video I said Sukamano, and everyone like they're commenting like how I said it. It's so funny.
Do
But
they think
it's like, come on. Like
that
if
you're
you're
doing it on purpose to not pronounce it properly?
I don't know. I get a lot of different things. Like some people think I'm doing it like to put on a show. Some people are just like how do you pronounce it like that? Like it's so obvious to pronounce it the right way. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like it's not that obvious. I feel like if you did grow up hearing it all the time, then it is because you know how it sounds. But I didn't grow up hearing any Malayalam. So it's like I just like I'm learning like I'll read a word and I'm gonna assume how it sounds, but I don't know if it sounds right or wrong. So then I say it, and then they're like, "That's completely wrong." Like just recently, I posted a video. I for so long I was saying Sundari, Sundari, and like my friend Alan's like, "It's Sundari," and I'm like, I would have never thought that that's how it would sound, you
Mm,
know?
yeah, and I think when they write using English letters, it's not the way that you would think it sounds. Like Param,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah.
Pazham, but I'm like, I hear an R when people say it, and there's no R when they write it
Yeah.
out.
That was my biggest thing when I had like my Malayalam teacher. When he first wrote that word, I was like pasam, and he's like, no, it's param, because like it's not R, because it's that other like I don't know, but
Yeah.
there's just the English when it's like Manglish, it makes it even more confusing because I'm
Mhm.
pronouncing it like how I would in English. But I think if I actually see the Malayalam letters, then it's like, oh, I know how that letter sounds, so then I'll say it more
Ah,
correctly.
yeah. Okay, well, that makes sense. And also in Malayalam, when native speakers, they say everything so quickly. So, like, there's a stir fry dish kind of in Malayalam, which I always heard sounds like merkuti. So I would just say potato merkuti. And then I saw it written out in English letters, and it was like Merica puerti. I'm like, wait, what? I've missed a few syllables in that my whole life. And so, but when you say it quickly, it's Merica puerti, I think.
It's yeah, because I feel like the language itself is so fast, and I'm like when I listen to it, I'm like, wait, hold on, say one word at a time, slow it down.
Yes.
Like it's
Yes.
hard. It- I think that's also another hard thing for me when I'm trying to like speak it because I speak it so slowly. And like my teacher's like, say it faster. Like you gotta
Mm,
say it faster, you know? And
right.
I'm like, I can't like say the words quickly. I don't know. I feel like Spanish is, I mean, certain depending on where you're from, like your Spanish can be really fast, like if you're Cuban or like on the coastal areas of like Colombia. But like my mom's from Bogota, and like from there, the Spanish is very slow. Like you take your time saying your words. So it's hard for me to like speak quickly in Malayalam. So I don't know.
No, I think you're doing great. And I do think it just takes time. I think Alan's a little hard on you, or Alan needs to stop making fun of you. And for people who follow um, if you see Alan, even though both their last names are Joseph, they're not married, they're not siblings. I used to be a Joseph. There's just lots of Joseph, just like Smith in America. There's lots of Smiths, there's lots of Davises, like there's lots of Josephs in India. So even though we look like this, we're not all related.
Exactly, like, we're not related or anything. I mean, I didn't even think me and Alan look alike. I guess we do have some similarities, but it's just so funny. We get so many comments, like
I am just so inspired because I feel like you've made a lot of bold moves in your life, like with your career of um, what you chose to study in school, and now you're doing coding in IT, but then you've got your bodybuilding, and I'm just so proud of you for making all those bold moves. What would you want to tell listeners if they are hesitant about making a bold move for their own life?
I would say just don't be afraid, put it in God's hands and just go for it because, like, you can't be afraid of what people think because later on when you are, like, upset or you feel sad that you didn't make that decision, they're not gonna be there to comfort you when you're feeling sad because of that, you know? Like, you just have to put yourself first and just go for it because you have one life to live.
Jessny, it's been so great to have you here on the podcast. I'm so glad being brown and bold, like brown encompasses so many, and within yourself, you encompass so much already. And to hear your story of being bold, I hope it's really inspirational to other people as they listen. So thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you everyone for joining us on this episode of Being Brown and Bold. You can find all the links from this show, and we will be here next time with another fabulous episode where you're going to be encouraged and you're going to find inspiration to make that bold move yourself. So till then, be wise and be bold.